She walked quietly through the crowded school hallway, her steps careful, her shoulders slightly hunched. Her shoes, faded, cracked at the seams, the kind you did not see anymore, made a soft, dragging sound on the polished floor. Some students glanced her way, then quickly looked back uninterested. But one boy, tall, loud, always surrounded by others, did not look away. He elbowed his friend and pointed at her shoes. "Are those even real? Or are they made of recycled tires?" he shouted. His voice echoed. Laughter followed. Cool. Sharp. It bounced off the lockers and found her ears. Her spine stiffened. She kept walking, eyes forward, as if she had not heard. But she had. Everyone had. A group of girls standing nearby covered their mouths and giggled. One of them snapped a photo. The boy laughed harder. "Come on. Where did she get those? Her dad's janitor closet?" Another round of laughter exploded. She reached the end of the hallway and turned the corner, her face burning, her heart pounding so loudly she thought others could hear it. But she would not cry. Not now. Not ever in front of them. What they did not know was that the girl they just laughed at, whose father mopped their cafeteria floors every morning before sunrise, had spent every evening of the past 4 years studying under a flickering kitchen light. She had aced every exam, written essays until her fingers hurt, and filled out scholarship applications when others were out partying. And in just 2 hours, in that very same auditorium where their voices now echoed with mockery, she would walk across the stage, not with shame, but with a letter in her hand. A letter that would silence them all. A letter that would open a future none of them saw coming. She stood behind the heavy curtain of the school auditorium, clutching the folded letter in her hand so tightly it had creased at the edges. Her breathing was shallow, her palms slightly damp. She peeked through the gap in the fabric and saw the crowd, students, teachers, parents, filling every seat. The boy who had mocked her was in the second row, slouched in his chair, legs spread wide like he owned the place. He had not seen her yet. He would. The principal stood at the podium, adjusting the microphone. His voice boomed across the auditorium. "This next student has shown extraordinary resilience, unmatched academic excellence, and a determination that moved every member of the board. She has been awarded a full scholarship to one of the top universities in the country." A murmur rolled through the crowd. Students sat up straighter. The boy who had laughed at her shoes nudged his friend, whispering guesses. None of them whispered her name. Not even once. "Please welcome, Emily Hart." There was a pause. And then she stepped onto the stage. For a moment, there was silence. Real, complete silence. Her old shoes clicked softly on the wood floor. Her head was held high, her shoulders back, her face calm. She walked to the microphone, unfolded the letter, and held it up for the crowd to see. Gasps. One teacher covered her mouth. Another student leaned forward, eyes wide. Emily saw the boy's face twist in confusion, then discomfort, then something else, something like regret. She did not speak yet. She let the moment stretch. Let them all look at her the way they never had before. When she finally opened her mouth to speak, her voice was steady. "I was never the loudest. I was never the most popular. But I worked hard when no one was watching. And today, I walk across this stage not for approval, but for every quiet student who has ever been laughed at simply for existing." A single clap broke out. Then another. And another. By the time she stepped away from the microphone, the auditorium was on its feet. After the ceremony, the hallway looked different. Not because the lockers had changed, but because the way people looked at her had. Students who never acknowledged her before now stepped aside. Some smiled awkwardly. A few even muttered congratulations under their breath. The same girl they laughed at hours ago now walked with quiet power, and they all felt it. Emily opened her locker slowly, placing the folded letter inside like it was made of glass. She caught a glimpse of herself in the small mirror taped to the inside of the door. Same face, same clothes, same worn-out shoes. But something inside her had shifted. She was no longer hiding, no longer pretending to be invisible just to avoid their cruelty. As she closed the locker, a shadow appeared beside her. It was him, the boy who had laughed the loudest. The one who had joked about her shoes in front of everyone. He scratched the back of his neck, eyes darting around like he was trying to find an escape route. But he stood still. "Hey," he mumbled. I did not know." Emily turned to face him, her expression unreadable. "You did not care to." He flinched slightly, his shoulders tensing. "I was just joking. You know, everyone laughs at stuff. It was not personal." She looked down at her shoes, then back at him. "You are right. It was not personal. Because you never saw me as a person." His mouth opened, then closed again. Words failed him. She did not wait for an apology. She had no use for one. Instead, she walked past him, each step louder than the last. Every step said, "I am not your joke. I am not your background character. I am not the punchline in your story." When she reached the door at the end of the hall, she paused. "You should pay attention," she said over her shoulder. "You never know whose name will be called next." Then she walked out into the sunlight, where the world finally felt wide open. The sun outside felt different on her skin, warmer, lighter, like the weight she carried for years had finally melted off her shoulders. Emily walked slowly through the courtyard, watching students spill out of the auditorium behind her. Some whispered, some stared. A few looked away, ashamed. But no one laughed now. She headed toward the benches near the far end of the school garden, a quiet place where she used to sit alone during lunch. It had always been her escape, the one place no one came to bother her. She ran her hand across the backrest of her usual spot and sat down, the creak of old wood familiar and grounding. In the distance, she saw her father approaching the school gate, his janitor uniform slightly stained, eyes squinting under the sun as he searched for her. Her throat tightened. She stood, waving gently. When he finally reached her, he paused, out of breath but smiling wide. "Did they call your name?" he asked softly, almost afraid to believe what he had heard through the double doors. She nodded, then handed him the scholarship letter. He unfolded it carefully, holding it with the same reverence he gave sacred things, like the photo of her late mother he kept in his wallet. As he read the first few lines, his lips trembled. His calloused fingers brushed the edge of the page. "They gave it to you," he whispered. "A full ride. Everything." Emily nodded again, this time through tears. "You did it, baby," he said, his voice cracking. "You did it." She leaned into his chest, and for the first time in a long time, she allowed herself to cry, not from pain or humiliation, but from the overwhelming joy of being seen, of being enough, of making it. Students walked past them, slowing down to glance, some even stopping. One teacher stepped forward and gently patted her father on the back. "She is going places," the teacher said with a kind smile. "You raised a remarkable daughter." He looked at Emily, tears pooling in his eyes. "No," he replied. "She raised herself. I just held the flashlight." Emily smiled through the tears. Her journey was just beginning. But this time, she was not walking it in silence or shame. She was walking into her future, with her head high, her heart full, and the whole world watching. That evening, the sky turned soft with orange streaks, and Emily sat by the window of their small apartment, the letter now framed and resting beside her on the table. Her father was in the kitchen, still in his uniform, whistling a tune he used to hum when she was little. The air smelled of pasta, cheap, simple, but somehow perfect tonight. Everything felt different, though nothing had physically changed. Same peeling wallpaper, same flickering ceiling light. But now, there was a warmth that filled every crack of their worn home. A pride. Her phone buzzed. A message. Unknown number. "Hey, I saw what happened today. I was in the crowd. I just wanted to say you earned it. Every bit of it. I hope you keep going. Sorry for not being the kind of person who stood up for you." Emily stared at it. Then another buzz. Another student. "I used to see you studying in the library when everyone else went home. You inspired me today. Thank you." Then another. And another. By nightfall, her inbox was flooded with messages, from students who ignored her, teachers who barely acknowledged her, even a few who once laughed at her. Not all were apologies, but most were filled with admiration, respect. For the first time, her story was being told without her having to shout. She had let her work speak, and now they were listening. She picked up her notebook and opened to the first page. Inside were handwritten goals she scribbled 3 years ago. Get scholarship, make Dad proud, change my future. She had written them with hope, not certainty. But one by one, they were no longer dreams. They were reality. Emily, her father called from the kitchen. Dinner's ready. She smiled, closed the notebook, and stood. Her reflection in the window showed the same girl. Same hair. Same eyes. But the way she carried herself now? Different. Stronger. She walked toward the kitchen table with her back straight and her step steady. And for the first time in her life, she believed, truly believed, that she belonged anywhere she chose to be. Weeks passed, but the moment never faded. Everywhere Emily went in school, eyes followed, but not with mockery this time. There was a quiet kind of awe in the way students looked at her now. Some still whispered, unsure how to act around someone they had once ignored or ridiculed. Others found courage to speak up. A girl from her biology class approached her during lunch and said, "I always wanted to sit with you, but I was scared they would laugh at me too." Emily smiled gently and gestured to the seat beside her. "You can sit now." The girl blinked, stunned, then slowly sat down. And just like that, one small wall came down. It was not about revenge for Emily. It was about showing that silence could be shattered without screaming, that strength did not always need to roar. Her actions had spoken louder than their cruelty ever had. College brochures began arriving in the mail, heavy envelopes with thick paper and gold seals. Her father brought them in every evening with pride, reading the names aloud like they were magic spells. Harvard, Yale, Stanford, UCLA. He would hand each to her like it was treasure, still amazed at the world opening up for his daughter. One night, as they sat together at the table, he asked quietly, "Are you scared?" She thought for a long moment. "Yes," she said finally, "but not of failing. I am scared of forgetting how it felt to be invisible, because I never want to be the kind of person who makes someone else feel like that." He reached across the table and squeezed her hand. "Then you are already ahead of the world." In the months that followed, Emily gave speeches. She spoke at youth events. She stood in front of crowds of students, parents, and teachers, not to talk about her scholarship, but about her shoes, about what they had meant, about how they became her armor instead of her shame. Every word came from a place of truth, and every time she told her story, more faces lit up, more hearts understood. And somewhere in the back of those rooms, she always noticed someone wiping away a tear, someone sitting up straighter, someone who had once felt invisible now believing maybe, just maybe, they mattered too. Graduation day arrived under a sky so blue it looked painted. The air buzzed with excitement, tassels swinging from caps, families crowding the field with balloons and posters. Emily stood at the edge of the stage again, but this time, not alone, and not as the quiet girl people overlooked. She was the valedictorian. She adjusted the microphone as the audience settled. Her father sat in the front row, wearing a clean shirt he had ironed 3 times that morning. He held up his phone to record, his hands trembling slightly. Her heart beat fast, but her voice did not shake. "When I first walked these halls," she began, "I did not feel seen. Not because I lacked value, but because sometimes people only look at the surface. And what they see there decides everything. My shoes were too old. My backpack was secondhand. My dad, my hero, cleaned your classrooms when no one else was here. And for that, I was labeled." The crowd was silent. Even the wind seemed to pause. "I used to think I had to earn worth, that if I just worked harder, maybe one day people would finally notice me. But I realize now, I was never the one who needed to change. They did." She looked directly into the crowd, her eyes steady. Somewhere near the middle, she saw the boy from the hallway again. He looked smaller now. Not because he had shrunk, but because she had grown. "I speak today not for revenge," she continued, "but for every student who walks quietly through this world, wondering if anyone sees them. We see you. And you matter, exactly as you are. Applause broke out. It started slow, then grew into a wave. Her father stood before anyone else, clapping so hard his eyes filled with tears. Teachers followed. Students stood. The whole field rose to their feet. As she stepped down from the stage, diploma in hand, she saw them all. The ones who laughed. The ones who watched in silence. And the ones now clapping with real, genuine respect. Emily walked past them with grace, the sun reflecting off her cap, her shoes still the same, but somehow, now, they looked golden.